Let the journey of discovery begin. The Ark. For centuries, the image of Noah's Ark in people's minds has been that of a long wooden vessel with a pointed bow, drifting through the great biblical flood. But the truth may be entirely different. A small clay tablet, barely larger than a modern smartphone, has opened up a completely new vision of the Ark, one that could force history itself to be rewritten. This clay tablet, dating back about 3,700 years, records detailed instructions for building a boat. Today, researchers call it the Babylonian Ark tablet. The story begins with Douglas Simmons, a history enthusiast. During World War II, his father somehow came into possession of this ancient artifact. For decades, it sat unnoticed among the family's miscellaneous belongings, with no one realizing they were safeguarding a key to one of humanity's greatest legends. Eventually, the tablet was handed over to the British Museum, where it caught the attention of Dr. Irving Finkel, an expert on Sumerian civilization, museum curator, and one of the few people in the world capable of reading ancient cuneiform script. With the keen eye of a seasoned scholar, he was immediately drawn to the 60 sharply etched lines on the clay surface. These inscriptions meticulously described how to construct an ark, but it was nothing like the familiar image from the Bible. This was a round boat, a coracle, similar to those once used by the Babylonians to navigate rivers only on an extraordinarily massive scale. The tablet clearly states that this enormous vessel had to be sealed with bitumen to make it waterproof. Bitumen, a petroleum-based resin, was a common construction material in ancient times. Once the outer layer was complete, the structure was reinforced with wooden beams and bound together with miles of rope to create a solid framework. What stands out even more is that this story on the clay tablet predates the biblical version by a significant margin. This has led researchers to believe that the flood narrative in the Bible may have borrowed from the ancient Mesopotamian myths. For millennia, a familiar legend persisted. A man warned by the gods of an apocalyptic flood, tasked with building a boat to save his family and pairs of animals. Remarkably, the Babylonian tablet contains the earliest written record of the phrase, "two of every kind." But does this prove that Noah and his ark truly existed? According to Dr. Finkel, the answer is no, and he asserts this with 107% certainty. He believes that the instructions on the tablet are the product of generations of oral storytelling, gradually embellished and adapted to capture attention, an ancient form of media strategy. In his view, those searching for Noah's Ark on Mount Ararat might be looking in the wrong place, as this ancient guide seems to point to somewhere far more distant and completely different. To test the feasibility of the instructions, a documentary team built a model of the round boat based on the tablet's design. Astonishingly, the vessel actually floated and could even carry animals, serving as powerful proof of the Babylonians' advanced engineering skills. Dr. Finkel, often compared to Indiana Jones of the ancient world, has dedicated his life to decoding such mysteries. Those who wish to delve deeper into this story can read his book, The Ark Before Noah. So, is the Ark real or merely an enticing legend? That question remains unanswered, and the debate, it seems, will never truly end. Keeping time. Have you ever felt like time is slipping through your fingers? We are constantly obsessed with time, losing it, killing it, buying, selling, making use of it, and then wishing we could take it back. But have you ever wondered why? Is this obsession a disease of the modern age, or has it existed far longer than we think? Surprisingly, the concept of time has not always been with us. And for that, we have the Sumerians to thank. About 5,000 years ago, the Sumerians invented a numerical system that not only shaped how we count, but also changed how we think about time itself. So how did those ancient mathematical minds devise a system that still governs our clocks today? The Sumerians were remarkably brilliant. Instead of limiting themselves to the decimal system we use now, they worked with both base 12 and base 60. Why choose those numbers? One theory suggests they used the 3 segments of each finger to count to 12 on one hand. With the other hand's 5 fingers representing groups of 12, they could count all the way to 60. This clever invention allowed them to perform complex calculations without any computers or even paper. Their fascination with the numbers 12 and 60 extended far beyond mathematics and shaped their understanding of the universe. They divided the day into 12 hours of light and 12 hours of darkness, creating the 24-hour cycle. This idea survived long after Sumerian civilization gave way to the Akkadians and then the Babylonians. The Babylonians took Sumerian innovations even further. They created the 360-degree circle, likely because a year was roughly 360 days long. Their passion for geometry and astronomy led them to develop star charts and predict celestial events like solar and lunar eclipses. These achievements shaped the science that followed, permanently embedding base 60 into timekeeping and navigation. When this knowledge reached ancient Greece, Scholars such as Hipparchus and Ptolemy adopted Babylonian astronomy. They divided degrees into 60 smaller parts, called minutes, and further divided those into seconds. Over time, this system became the global standard for measuring not only the Earth, but also the heavens above. What about mechanical clocks? They didn't appear until 14th century Europe. Early clocks had only one hand, but by the 16th century, the growing need for precise astronomical observation led to the addition of minute and second hands. This precision allowed scientists like Tycho Brahe to record celestial movements down to the second. His data enabled Johannes Kepler to discover the laws of planetary motion, which Isaac Newton later used to unlock the secrets of gravity. Imagine a world without clocks. What would we do? Why do we still measure time using base 60? Simply because it works. Base 60 divides evenly into many numbers, making calculations easier for ancient mathematicians. Over time, our method of measuring seconds has evolved. Today, it's based on the vibrations of the cesium atom, with an accuracy that modern science can barely surpass. Yet, without the innovations of our distant ancestors, we could never have come this far. Who built this strange harbor? During an age of industrial breakthroughs and daring creativity, an astonishing feat of engineering emerged: Porto Flavia, a fortress-like harbor clinging to the cliffs of Sardinia. Perched in such a perilous location, one can't help but wonder, who came up with this idea? Despite its ancient appearance, this structure is not old at all. It was built in 1923. A century ago, the nearby towns of Iglesias and Nabita were thriving. This region was not only mining gold in a figurative sense, but was also rich with coal, sulfur, zinc, silver, and other valuable metals. The mines produced so much that they needed a more efficient way to get the goods to market. The genius engineer Cesare Vicelli came up with a bold solution, constructing a port directly into the cliffside. What you see on the outside is only the shell. Hidden deep within the rock is a network of tunnels connected to massive vertical storage silos. Minerals from the mines were brought by train, dumped into the silos, and dropped down to the lower tunnels. From there, conveyor belts carried the goods straight onto ships moored against the cliffs. The entire process took just 2 days. That may sound slow today, but at the time it was revolutionary, completely automated for the first time. Before Porto Flavia, workers had to load minerals into baskets and lower them down the cliffs with ropes, like Rapunzel letting down her hair. That process took 7 days from mine to ship. Porto Flavia remained in operation until 1990, when mining in the area ceased. Today, it is protected by UNESCO. Visitors can tour its cold tunnels and rusting conveyor belts on guided excursions. The Minoan snake goddess. In the early 20th century, as excavations on the island of Crete reached their peak, British archaeologist Sir Arthur Evans stumbled upon one of the most controversial and captivating figures of the Minoan civilization, the snake goddess. In 1903, amid the ruins of the ancient palace of Knossos, he unearthed 2 small glazed ceramic figurines buried deep within an area known as the temple repositories, ritual storerooms once holding sacred objects of a lost world. The larger figurine depicts a bare-chested woman wearing an intricately pleated skirt, with snakes coiling around her arms and a snake crown adorning her head. The smaller figurine, no less exquisite, features intertwined serpent motifs and a crown shaped like a cat, evidence of the Minoans' fascination with symbolism and ancient fashion. Evans believed these were not mere decorative pieces. He named the larger one the snake goddess and the smaller one the snake priestess, suggesting they symbolized fertility, rebirth, and female power, perhaps embodying a central goddess in a matriarchal Minoan society. His interpretation reflected the 19th century fascination with mother goddess worship, during a time when Europeans were searching for the earliest roots of major religions. Yet the truth is not so simple. When unearthed, both figurines were fragmented. Evans himself reconstructed them, and his intervention may have unintentionally altered their original forms. Modern scholars have begun to question his interpretation, asking whether these figures were truly deities or perhaps depictions of priestesses, devotees, or simply protective symbols in domestic life. In ancient belief, snakes were guardians of the home, an idea later echoed in Greek mythology. This twist only makes the snake goddess story more intriguing. Across cultures, snakes have symbolized wisdom, cycles of life and death, fertility, and ancient magic. Some researchers have drawn parallels between the Minoan snake goddess and deities such as Egypt's Wadjet or Phoenicia's Astarte goddesses, closely associated with serpents and sacred power. Given the Minoans' vast maritime trade network, the exchange and blending of cultural influences from across the Mediterranean is entirely plausible. Many believe the snake goddess may have been an early inspiration for later Greek mythological figures like Athena, the goddess of wisdom, who is also linked to the serpent, or Ariadne, the Minoan princess famed in the legend of the labyrinth and the Minotaur. The snake goddess is not an isolated figure. Minoan art and artifacts often depict women at the center of power, frequently accompanied by serpents. While no conclusive evidence proves that Minoan society was matriarchal, remnants of rituals, frescoes, and pottery all point to the profound spiritual role of women. In the Minoan world, women may have been priestesses, ritual leaders, or embodiments of the connection between fertility, nature, and cosmic order, a powerful image that the mysterious serpent helped express perfectly. The Sumerian king list. If you could live for thousands of years, would you accomplish everything you ever dreamed of? This question arises from an ancient clay tablet that seems almost impossible, the Sumerian king list, an artifact that has sparked endless scholarly debate. It appears to blur the line between mythology and history, baffling even the most skeptical researchers. Inscribed on an ancient clay tablet, the Sumerian king list claims to record the reigns of kings who ruled Sumer, one of humanity's earliest civilizations. But there is something extraordinary about it. These kings were not ordinary rulers. According to the list, some reigned for thousands of years, and the earliest kings were said to have appeared after kingship descended from heaven. Could this be a hint at extraterrestrial visitors? No one knows for certain, but many believe it's a possibility. The story begins in Eridu, a Sumerian city dating back to around 5400 BCE. Yet the list claims that kingship emerged there about 266000 years ago, a number that raises eyebrows since civilized humans were not even supposed to exist at that time. The antediluvian kings, such as Enmenlu-Ana, were said to have ruled for 43200 years. If that's true, they would have had time to achieve unimaginable things. The list grows even stranger when it mentions a great flood, echoing the biblical story of Noah's Ark. After this catastrophe, kingship was transferred to Kish, where rulers like Nangishlishma and Zukakep also reigned for hundreds of years, lifespans strikingly similar to figures in the Old Testament such as Methuselah. Is this just coincidence, or does it hold deeper meaning? As mentioned, the Sumerians used a base 60 system, leading some historians to believe these numbers are symbolic. Yet when applying this theory, the results don't consistently align, especially for kings after the flood. Could it be that these reigns were metaphors for achievements, cultural eras, or even traces of extraterrestrial intervention? Recent DNA discoveries, like the case of Albert Perry, add new layers of mystery to humanity's timeline. Perry was an ordinary man, but when his DNA was tested, the results were shocking. His Y chromosome traced back 338,000 years far earlier than the supposed common ancestor of all humans. Could this have a connection to the Sumerian king list? Some believe these kings may have belonged to a lost civilization, existing long before recorded history. They argue that this civilization either vanished or evolved into something entirely different. Adding to this mystery, traces of this ancient DNA have been found in a small community in Cameroon, the Mbo people. This means there are human bloodlines that can be traced back over 3,000,000 years, lending weight to the theory of a forgotten civilization. Even today, some people carry these genetic remnants, linking us to a past that has long been erased from memory. The question remains unresolved. Were the Sumerian kings truly divine beings? Did they rule over a civilization that has yet to be discovered? Or are they simply myths woven together with creative record-keeping? The treasure chest of the last shogun. From 1603 to 1868, Japan was ruled under a feudal military government, the Tokugawa shogunate, which controlled the entire country, along with its islands. Beginning with Tokugawa Ieyasu and the Battle of Sekigahara, the Tokugawa clan reigned from the majestic Edo Castle, a structure that still stands today within the grounds of the Imperial Palace in Tokyo. They ruled alongside the daimyo, the powerful samurai lords. Most of the shogunate's wealth came from taxation. Commissioners were tasked with managing finances, collecting money from merchants, drawing funds from temples and monasteries, and extracting wealth from major cities like Nagasaki and Osaka. Even the famed Sato gold mine was required to pay its share to the shogunate. But then things began to unravel. By the late 1860s, the Edo period came to an end as the Meiji government rose to power. Deep conflicts erupted between the Tokugawa forces and the new imperial army. An alliance formed, and by 1868, the shogunate was overthrown. Legend has it that before the head of the Tokugawa clan was defeated, he gathered the entire fortune accumulated over more than 200 years and buried it somewhere on Mount Akagi in Gunma Prefecture. The treasure was said to be so vast that it took more than 1,000 men to bury it deep within the mountain, and afterward, all of them were killed to ensure the secret would never be revealed. In 1941, The New York Times reported that a treasure had been discovered in the Akagi Mountains. Someone had allegedly dug 67 meters deep and pulled up gold along with other precious items. However, this report may not have been entirely accurate, as no further discoveries or confirmations of the Tokugawa treasure have surfaced since, unless, of course, someone found it and chose to keep it hidden. The Haunted Stone Monument of Japan. In 1975, a quiet rural town in Japan suddenly became the focus of national attention. It all began with an ancient stone monument standing silently in the grass behind a community center in the town of Moriya, just an hour's drive from Tokyo. Locals had barely paid it any mind until a young girl claimed she had seen ghostly faces appear on its surface, frightening her so much that she refused to sleep alone. Rumors spread like wildfire. Within days, people from surrounding areas flocked to the site. They didn't just hear the stories, they saw it for themselves. On the stone's surface, as dusk settled, faint faces appeared: an old man, a woman, a child, and even a cat. These images did not resemble random cracks, but seemed as if they had been burned into the stone by some supernatural flame, much like those who claim to see the face of God on a piece of toast. No one knows how long the monument has stood there. Some local scholars believe it is about 100 years old. Others insist it may have stood for 1,000. Its surface bears a carving of a wrathful Buddhist deity, a sight unsettling enough to make the faint-hearted shiver. Though no concrete evidence of supernatural events has ever been recorded in the area, the monument's silent presence in the field exudes an eerie unease. The story quickly spread beyond the town. Television stations across Japan reported on the phenomenon. Moriya, once an obscure village, suddenly became a pilgrimage site for psychics, mediums, and the curious. Traffic clogged the roads, vendors sprang up overnight, and crowds lined up to gaze at the souls said to be trapped within the stone. Eyewitness accounts multiplied. One claimed to see the gaze of an old man. Another spoke of a young woman with a sorrowful smile. Someone even insisted they heard the cries of a child echoing from beneath the ground. Questions arose. Were spirits truly sealed within the monument? If so, what bound them there? A failed ritual, a curse, or unresolved grievances? Like all strange fads, the frenzy eventually faded. Media coverage waned. Visitors dwindled. Vandals sprayed graffiti on the stone, forcing local authorities to erect an iron fence to protect it. And so, the monument was forgotten once more, returning to its silent vigil. Today, few come to Moriya in search of spirits. Yet the stone still stands alone in the field, the eyes of its carved deity gazing toward the nearby cemetery. Perhaps those souls remain imprisoned inside, waiting for someone brave enough to listen to the story they never finished telling. The Witch's Mountain. Imagine a world where giants once walked the earth, and magic flowed across the land. Welcome to the prehistoric heart of Ireland. Part burial ground, part communal hall of the Neolithic age, and part solar calendar, the passage tombs of Loughcrew stand as one of the most mythical sites on the Emerald Isle. They predate even the Egyptian pyramids. In County Meath, Ireland, 4 hills rise in a row. The ancients called them the Mountains of the Witch. Irish legend tells of a giant witch who leapt from hill to hill, dropping stones from her apron. Those very stones formed the Loughcrew cairns. When she reached the last hill, the witch slipped, struck her head on a rock, and died instantly. Locals buried her deep within the earth, where her bones are said to rest to this day. Scientists have dated these structures to around 3,300 BCE. Each hill contains a cluster of stone tombs. These monuments are ancient, their roofs collapsed, with cruciform chambers and small alcoves where the dead were once laid to rest. Excavations have uncovered human ashes and even unburned bones. Who was buried in these monumental tombs remains an unsolved mystery. Kings, queens, or something not of this world? 5,000-year-old Irish civilization reserved these colossal stone graves for someone or something worthy, aligning them perfectly with the spring and autumn equinoxes. On the spring equinox, sunlight pierces the tomb, as if someone outside is shining a beam directly into its heart. People still gather here each year to welcome the new season. If you're seeking a special place to greet the next equinox, Ireland should be on your list. When you see the lights striking the inner chamber, you can't help but wonder, how did Neolithic people know so much about the stars? The Lost Stone Tower on the Silk Road. For centuries, the shadow of a legendary stone tower has haunted ancient records, fueling endless curiosity among historians and geographers. Believed to have once stood along the Silk Road, it served as a mythical landmark, yet mysteriously, no one has ever found it. Though never seen in modern times, archaeologists today are almost certain the tower existed. Their confidence stems from a highly reliable ancient source. In 140 CE, Greco-Roman geographer Claudius Ptolemy recorded its location in his work, Geographia, one of the earliest known texts of cartography. Without satellite maps or GPS, Ptolemy relied on sophisticated ancient methods to chart the known world. In his writings, Ptolemy mentions the stone tower at least 10 times, a number too significant to ignore. According to him, it was a well-known stop for caravans traveling the Silk Road, where merchants rested, resupplied, and traded before embarking on the grueling journey across deserts, mountains, and plains. Other first-century accounts further reinforced its existence. Ptolemy placed the tower at latitude 43, longitude 135, right in the heart of the Silk Road, the trade network that connected Asia and Europe from the 2nd century BCE until it was replaced by maritime routes. Yet despite this precise data, modern researchers have been unable to pinpoint its exact location, narrowing it down to only 4 possible sites. One candidate is the city of Tashkent in Uzbekistan. Its name literally translates to Stone Tower. Coincidentally, its geographic position lies remarkably close to Ptolemy's coordinates, off by only a few degrees. Another theory points to Mount Suleiman II in Kyrgyzstan. Scholars like Claude Rapin and Riaz-Din believe the remains of the tower may be hidden somewhere within this sacred mountain, a long-standing cultural and religious landmark. British explorer Aurel Stein proposed a different possibility. The tower might be in the Karategin Valley of Kurdistan, perched atop a remote canyon. The rugged terrain and isolated location only add credibility to his theory. Most recently, in 2014, researcher Irina Tupakova used spherical trigonometry, an advanced mathematical tool, to reinterpret Ptolemy's coordinates. She concluded that the tower likely stood in Tashkurgan, in China's Xinjiang province, a remote, quiet place near the border where east meets west, an ideal location for a legendary Silk Road landmark. Though the stone tower has yet to reveal itself, it lives on in scholarly debates, daring expeditions, and the imagination of those who love ancient history. Perhaps it is yet to be found, or perhaps it still stands silently, hidden among rock and time, waiting to be discovered once more. The 10 Plagues of Egypt. It was a discovery that stunned scholars. In the heart of ancient Egypt, an old mystery seemed to be resurfacing, one that might directly connect to the famous biblical account of the 10 plagues that struck Egypt. The evidence did not come from a ruined structure or a forgotten tomb, but from an ancient papyrus written by a royal scribe named Ipuwer. Known as the Ipuwer Papyrus, this document contains haunting verses describing chaos, collapse, and despair sweeping across the land. Much of what is recorded in this papyrus eerily mirrors the events described in the Book of Exodus. Scholars have been left asking, could this be a factual account of the legendary Exodus? Though the original manuscript is lost, the surviving papyrus is believed to be a copy of an even older text, with its dating hotly debated. Some researchers argue it was written between 2000 and 1500 BCE, remarkably close to the time frame the Bible attributes to the Israelites' escape. Within the papyrus, familiar images leap from the lines to anyone who knows the Bible. The river turning to blood highlighted in Exodus 7 also appears here. Ipuwer describes water turned red, forcing people to search desperately for clean drinking water. In another passage, he writes of the suffering of animals and the desolation of the land, reminiscent of the plague that struck down Egypt's livestock. And then there is fire flames rising violently, burning gates, columns, and walls. Does this not recall the hail of fire from the Bible? Similarly, the papyrus speaks of a land without light, echoing the 3 days of darkness Moses called down upon Egypt. An even more chilling passage mentions mass death, where all men are like nobles in their dying, possibly referring to the final plague, when every Egyptian firstborn perished. The deeper one reads, the harder it becomes to ignore the striking parallels. Ipuwer also describes a social order turned upside down, the poor becoming rich, while the wealthy are brought low. This aligns with Exodus, which recounts the Israelites leaving Egypt laden with gold and silver taken from their former masters. The papyrus states that the poor have become owners of wealth, almost as if reflecting the scene where the Hebrews plundered Egypt before their departure. More intriguingly, one passage mentions a man who poured water upon the ground. Many believe this is a symbolic reference to Moses, who transformed the waters of the Nile into blood to prove the power of his God. Elsewhere, Ipuwer writes of a king who welcomed into Egypt a group of shepherds or birds, possibly an allusion to Jacob's family, who later became enslaved in the land. Of course, not everyone believes the Ipuwer papyrus is definitive proof of the biblical plagues. Some argue it is merely a literary work, symbolic of societal collapse or natural disasters, dramatized in poetic form. Yet the uncanny similarities between this ancient Egyptian text and the biblical narrative continue to fuel debate among archaeologists and theologians alike. So, did Ipuwer truly witness the wrath of the divine? Or was he simply describing a time of turmoil, where people explain disasters through supernatural imagery. To this day, the Ipuwer Papyrus remains one of the most mysterious and hotly debated documents in Egypt's history, a shadowy bridge between religion, legend, and truth. Decoding the mystery of deep space. Did researchers truly uncover an artifact that could unlock the secrets of the universe? In Rupin Piccolo, a small village in Italy, archaeologists excavated a mysterious stone disc, roughly the size of a car tire. This artifact may be one of the oldest star maps ever discovered, possibly even containing clues about a lost star that exploded into a supernova thousands of years ago. But is that really possible? Between 1800 BCE and 400 BCE, the ancient inhabitants of the Rupin Piccolo hill fort built a fortified settlement. Inside its stone walls, archaeologists found a disc covered in engraved marks. These were not random scratches. They were deliberately carved, ordered, and clearly meaningful. But what meaning did they hold? That is the heart of this mystery. Using modern software, scientists analyzed 29 marks on the disc, 24 on one side and 5 on the other. Their findings revealed that the patterns matched constellations visible in the night sky thousands of years ago. Some identifiable star groups included Orion, Scorpius, Copia, and the Pleiades. Yet one mark stood out, a single engraving north of Orion that did not correspond to any star known today. So what was it? A mistake? Experts don't think so. They propose that this unknown mark may represent a star that once existed but later vanished in a supernova, or perhaps during a failed supernova. In such an event, the star briefly flares before collapsing into a black hole, leaving behind no visible trace. Scientists may actually be tracing a lost black hole thanks to a 2,400-year-old stone disk, an extraordinary possibility. But what was the disk's purpose? Perhaps it was more than just a star map. It may have served as a calendar to track agricultural cycles, since ancient civilizations relied heavily on the skies to determine planting and harvest seasons. A small error in timing could mean the difference between survival and famine. This discovery also raises questions about the people who created it. The civilization that built the Rupin Piccolo hill fort predates Rome, constructing hundreds of fortresses across the region. They not only survived, but also observed the heavens with remarkable precision. As researcher Paolo Malero noted, their effort to record the sky reveals a profound understanding of the relationship between astronomy and daily life. Whether they believed in astrology, as we do today, remains uncertain. Interestingly, the disk from Rupin Piccolo can be compared to the famous Nebra sky disk of Germany, a 3,600-year-old artifact. While the Nebra disk is thought to hold symbolic meaning, the artifact from Rupin Piccolo may be the earliest accurate star map, predating modern astronomical charts by centuries. Could this ancient disk help us trace a lost black hole? It's too early to tell, but in science, anything is possible. The legendary horned serpent. Amid the sun-scorched wilderness of northern South Africa, where low shrubs cover the hillsides and scattered boulders resemble traces of an ancient world, a strange discovery was made. Archaeologist Julien Benoit, during an expedition to the Linton rock art site, stumbled upon an unusual petroglyph, an enigmatic image depicting a horned serpent, more like something from ancient legend than the natural world. The artwork is believed to have been carved by the San people in the 19th century. Unlike any familiar animal, the creature bears long tusks and an entirely otherworldly form. According to San oral tradition passed down through generations, this was a rain-bringing creature, a sacred spirit from the world beyond, often invoked during drought ceremonies to call forth the rain. What caught scientists' attention, however, was not only the art or the myth, but the possible link between legend and an actual creature that once existed. Paleontologists suggest the figure may have been inspired by the extinct Aulocephalodon, an ancient synapsid with long tusks and a massive body that roamed South Africa hundreds of millions of years ago, before vanishing during a mass extinction. Coincidentally, the Karoo region, where most Aulocephalodon fossils have been found, lies not far from the site of the rock carving. Julien Benoit believes the San may have stumbled upon these fossils, perhaps during hunts or by chance. With their deep sensitivity to nature and the spirit world, they could have woven these fossilized remains into their mythology, connecting them to their rain-making rituals. In San cosmology, the rain ceremony is a journey into the spirit realm, where they hunt the rainbringer and bring back rain to the world of the living. What better symbol to represent the bridge between life and death than the fossilized remains of a giant, long-extinct creature? The San case is not unique. Across the world, many ancient cultures unearthed fossils and incorporated them into their legends, from Native American tribes to Eurasian nomads. Records even suggest the San may have carried dinosaur bones to sacred sites, showing their profound connection to Earth's ancient memory. So, did the legendary horned serpent truly exist? science has yet to give a definitive answer. While there are intriguing connections between the carvings, mythology, and fossils, further research is needed to determine whether this creature was a forgotten reality or simply a mythical fusion of fossil evidence and imagination. Whatever the truth, this discovery reminds us of something important. Ancient cultures were not just storytellers, they were the first observers. They didn't merely hear the world, they watched, felt, and interpreted it through myth, symbol, and instinctive wisdom. In their world, there was no boundary between reality and legend, only a deep interweaving of earth, stone, and the spirits of the past. The Sea Peoples. Around 1200 BCE, a mysterious group known as the Sea Peoples shook the entire Mediterranean. Powerful civilizations such as Egypt, the Hittites, and Canaan suddenly came under attack from unknown invaders. It was like a domino effect, great empires collapsing one after another. Only Egypt managed to retain its power. This period, known as the Late Bronze Age collapse, remains one of history's greatest mysteries. But who were the Sea Peoples? Among the most prominent of these groups were the Shogun, or Shardana, yet their origins remain unclear. Egyptian records often depict them wearing horned helmets, a crucial clue, and link them to the island of Sardinia. How do we know this? An ancient Phoenician inscription, the Nora stone, refers to Sardinia by the name Shurd, which closely resembles the name Shurden. Intriguing, isn't it? The question is, were the Shurden originally from Sardinia? Or did they settle there after their campaigns shook the Mediterranean? Archaeologists continue to debate. Adding to the mystery are small nuragic bronze statues discovered on Sardinia, depicting warriors wearing horned helmets identical to Egyptian descriptions of the Shurden. Do these figures prove that the Shurden came from Sardinia, or do they merely represent warriors who settled there after their conquests? The helmet of Miltiades. An ancient warrior once faced a life or death decision: risk everything in a decisive battle, or endure a prolonged siege. What's the hardest choice you've ever had to make? Who would have thought that an old helmet could tell us so much about its owner? The discovery of Miltiades' helmet is like opening a time capsule holding the legacy of one of history's most legendary warriors. The helmet was unearthed in the late 19th century at the ruins of the Temple of Zeus in Olympia. Though the top dome is missing, the Corinthian-style helmet remains remarkably intact despite being over 2,500 years old. Most striking is the inscription on its surface. Miltiades dedicates this to Zeus. So, who was Miltiades, and why is this helmet so significant? Miltiades was the general at the center of one of history's most famous battles, the Battle of Marathon in 490 BCE. At that time, Athens faced the mighty Persian Empire advancing to conquer Greece. With sharp military insight, Miltiades devised a daring strategy. Instead of waiting for a siege, he led his forces into open battle on the plain of Marathon. Despite being vastly outnumbered, they defeated the Persians, saving Athens and possibly Western civilization itself. After the victory, Miltiades is believed to have dedicated his helmet to Zeus, perhaps to thank the god for triumph or to seek blessings for future victories. Most historians favor the former, citing accounts from Herodotus and Plutarch. If so, this helmet is not just a piece of armor, it's a symbol of gratitude and a tangible artifact from a turning point in history. The Battle of Marathon became legendary because of Miltiades' bold decision to fight rather than be besieged. According to Herodotus, he persuaded fellow general Callimachus to cast the deciding vote in favor of battle, arguing that Athens' future and freedom depended on their courage. The vote passed, and the rest is history. His victory not only saved Athens but also paved the way for its golden age, where democracy, philosophy, and art flourished. Yet Miltiades' name never shone as brightly as Pericles or Alexander the Great, perhaps because his career ended in tragedy, imprisoned after a failed campaign. Still, his legacy endures, just like his immortal helmet. The Ishango Bone. Resting quietly in a museum is a 2,000-year-old bone that could change how we see early humans. This is the Ishango Bone, discovered in 1960 by Belgian geologist Jean de Heinzelin in what is now the Democratic Republic of Congo. He had no idea he had just found a prehistoric computer. The Ishango Bone is a fibula from a baboon, about 10 centimeters long, covered with mysterious notches. These markings are arranged in 3 columns, resembling tally marks, but with strict, organized patterns. What was its purpose? Some researchers believe it was a counting tool used by prehistoric people to track hunted animals or lunar cycles. Imagine a hunter marking the bone each time he spotted game, or each time a new moon appeared like a primitive notebook made of bone. The notches are not random. Some correspond to prime numbers divisible only by 1 and themselves, such as 11 and 13. Did early humans understand prime numbers? If so, this represents a huge leap in mathematical thought. Others suggest the markings reflect a lunar calendar, crucial for hunter-gatherers since moon phases influenced hunting and planting. It was like a prehistoric reminder system for the best times to sow or hunt. Even more intriguing, some experts think the notches reveal an understanding of binary mathematics, the very foundation of modern computing. Certain marks appear symmetrically, suggesting the creators may have thought in terms of doubling and halving numbers. It's astonishing to think prehistoric humans might have grasped ideas that underpin today's technology. So was this merely a counting tool, or evidence that our ancestors were capable of far more complex mathematical thinking? The witch prison. After being haunted to the point of fleeing, a woman put her house up for sale, but no one wanted to buy it. This may be the scariest house in England. If the price were right, would you dare buy a house that once imprisoned witches? Most people don't name their homes. You wouldn't call your house Tom or the Terminator, but Vanessa Mitchell's house is known as The Cage, not exactly a welcoming name, and certainly not one she chose herself. Vanessa moved into the ancient home in 2004. Just 4 years later, she left, terrified beyond sleep. What happened to her was reminiscent of the infamous Amityville haunting at 112 Ocean Avenue, where the Lutz family fled in panic, but that's another story. After leaving, Vanessa put the house up for sale. The most recent listing, in 2019, was around $300,000. But who would want to move into a house known as The Cage, a place where people claim to have been attacked by ghosts? According to Vanessa, she frequently saw mysterious figures appear and vanish. That was scary enough, but things got worse. Blood inexplicably appeared on the walls where no one was injured. Once, while pregnant, Vanessa was pushed by an unseen force. She even reported being slapped on the backside by a demonic entity. Who knew ghostly hauntings came with such indignities? The origin of the name The Cage explains everything. The house was once a prison in the 16th century, used to hold accused witches before their trials. It is infamous for its connection to Ursula Kemp. Ursula was a local healer in the 1500s. She cured many illnesses, but was accused of witchcraft, imprisoned in The Cage, and hanged in 1582. Before her death, she named several other women as witches. And as you know, snitches rarely meet a good end. The women she named were arrested, and they, in turn, accused others. Perhaps they were tortured into confessing, or so terrified they named anyone they could think of to save themselves. All who were imprisoned or tortured were held within The Cage. The haunting did not end there. The site remained a prison until 1908. There is, however, some good news. According to Vanessa's real estate agent, the spirits have been exorcised. After 500 years of supernatural turmoil, the house is now said to be clean. Perhaps it's finally ready for its next auction. The Forgotten Underground Temple. A forgotten temple, a rival god, and a secret society archaeologists have uncovered a mystery that shakes the very foundations of ancient history. During excavations at the ancient fortress of Zerzevan in Turkey, they discovered a secret dating back to the Roman Empire. This secret is tied to a god who once directly competed with Jesus Christ and lost. Since 2014, an archaeological team funded by Turkey's Ministry of Culture and Tourism has been excavating the ruins at Zerzevan Castle. Over a decade, they slowly uncovered crumbling structures and buried temples. Their most recent discovery, an underground complex dedicated to the god Mithras. This is the kind of place you wish you could have seen before it was destroyed. 1900 years ago, Zerzevan Fortress stood high on the hill like an impregnable stronghold, a scene straight out of The Lord of the Rings. What makes this site extraordinary is that it was not only a military base, but also the center of a secret cult. Archaeologists have uncovered more than 1,200 meters of defensive walls, watchtowers, fortifications, armories, and hidden tunnels. Mithras was the god of the sun, light, and justice. In the 1st century, he was one of the most revered deities in the Roman Empire. Mithraism rose to prominence at the same time Jesus began preaching in Judea, and for a while, it seemed poised to surpass Christianity. By the 3rd century, Mithraism had spread throughout the empire. Soldiers, nobles, and merchants all joined its ranks. Yet historians still don't fully understand what happened next. A dramatic shift in public belief occurred. Followers of Mithras gradually abandoned their faith and converted to Christianity. By the 4th century, Christianity became the official religion of Rome. Mithraism withered and then vanished into the dusty corridors of history. The underground temples called Mithraea once held mysterious rituals, only to be abandoned. Occasionally, one is rediscovered, like the one at Zerzevan. The problem is that even with these discoveries, historians still don't know exactly what went on inside. Yes, the followers of Mithras performed rituals, that much is obvious. But what kind of rituals? What did they pray for? To whom did they offer sacrifices? The secrecy surrounding the cult may have sealed its fate. When it died out, it left no written records. Perhaps it was this very secrecy that led to its own destruction. Noah's Ark in 2022. Scientists from various Turkish institutions, including Istanbul Technical University, began a renewed search for Noah's Ark. They conducted excavations in hopes of finally solving the mystery of the legendary vessel built by Noah at God's command, a ship meant to save pairs of every animal species and humankind itself. This story is as old as humanity, told in the Bible, the Torah, and the Quran. Experts in geophysics, chemistry, and archaeology focused on an area in Agri province, on Turkey's Mount Ararat. According to the Bible, this is where the Ark came to rest after the floodwaters receded. Researchers have surveyed the area since 2003, yet to this day, they have not uncovered undeniable evidence beyond the biblical narrative. Why do they believe the Ark may truly be buried here? It all stems from a natural formation lying between the villages of Telsakar and Uzungili. Satellite images show the structure resembling an enormous ship, almost impossibly so. Indeed, it looks as though a massive vessel lies buried beneath layers of sediment on the mountainside. Whether it is truly the Ark remains controversial, but no one denies that there is a ship-shaped formation exactly where the Bible says it should be. The search for the Ark has been ongoing for centuries. One of the earliest expeditions took place in 1829, led by Johann Jacob Friedrich Wilhelm Parrot, who climbed the mountain in hopes of finding wooden planks from the great vessel. He found nothing, and the latest 2022 expedition also failed to uncover any remains. However, they collected sediment samples from the formation, hoping further analysis will reveal more. Only time and future excavations will tell if Noah's Ark truly lies buried on this mountain. Blackbeard's treasure. The legendary pirate Blackbeard, also known as Edward Teach, terrorized the Caribbean in the early 18th century, amassing an enormous fortune. He was killed in 1718, and with him, his treasure vanished. 300 years have passed, and the mystery remains unsolved. Is there a map with an X marking the spot, or is it all just legend? The disappointing truth is that Blackbeard accumulated so much wealth that it's unlikely he kept it all in one treasure chest. Though records estimate his fortune at the equivalent of $12.5 million today, experts believe most of his cash was never documented. It may be scattered across the Caribbean or lying deep beneath the sea. In the final weeks of his life, Blackbeard knew the end was near. The Spanish pursued him, the British hunted him, and his time was running out. It's not hard to imagine he buried his treasures across multiple islands. One of the most likely spots is Plum Point. Granted a short-lived pardon, Blackbeard tried to live quietly there, building a small house in Plum Point, Bath, North Carolina. Many believe much of his true wealth is buried somewhere in this area. Treasure hunters have dug for years but found no gold. From 1717 to 1718, Blackbeard is believed to have attacked about 30 ships. He appeared near Antigua, the Grenadines, Martinique, and many other places. His treasure could be hidden on any one of those islands, but to this day, not a single coin has surfaced. The treasure of Yanti. In 1532, Inca Emperor Atahualpa was captured by Spanish conquistador Francisco Pizarro. Few know that the Spanish victory came from exploiting a civil war between Atahualpa and his brother Huascar. Pizarro took advantage of the Inca Empire's division to bring it down. While imprisoned in Cajamarca, Atahualpa offered to ransom himself with an enormous quantity of gold. Pizarro agreed, and gold was gathered from across the empire to pay for the Spanish withdrawal. General Rumiñahui was responsible for transporting 750 tons of gold. The Spanish suspected this was a trap, so Pizarro strangled Atahualpa to death and burned his body. This event marked the beginning of the Inca Empire's fall, and Pizarro never received the gold. Legend says Rumiñahui ordered the entire treasure hidden in a secret location in what is now Ecuador. This region, known today as Yanti, is a mountainous area ranging from 2,400 to 4,200 meters in elevation, perched above the Amazon rainforest near the Avenue of Volcanoes, a harsh, volatile landscape. Despite the dangers, for 500 years countless treasure hunters have searched for it, starting with José Valverde, the first bishop of South America, just 50 years after the emperor's death. He is said to have found enough gold to enrich himself, but since then, no one has seen another piece of it. The ship in the desert. In the American Southwest, legends tell of a ship stranded in the desert. There are many such stories, all describing sea vessels lost in places like the Colorado or California deserts. The most famous comes from the Civil War era, rumors of a Spanish treasure ship buried under tons of sand somewhere north of the Gulf of California. How could a Spanish ship from the sea end up in the middle of a desert? The answer lies in floods. The earliest stories of the stranded ship surfaced after the legendary Colorado River flood of 1862. Colonel Albert Evans, claimed to have seen the ship in 1863. In 1870, the Los Angeles Daily News reported a half-buried ship near Dos Palomas, 40 miles north of Yuma, Arizona. Witnesses said it was visible from afar, but the area was poorly surveyed, and before anyone could dig it up, the ship vanished beneath sand and mud. Scientists believe major floods along the Colorado River in the 17th century could have created ideal conditions for a Spanish ship to drift inland. It may have been carried by floodwaters and stranded when the water receded. This could have happened more than once, leaving ships buried under desert sands along with their lost treasures. A particularly credible account comes from 1615. Spanish explorer Juan de Iturbe was swept inland by a massive tidal surge from the Gulf of California into Lake Cahuilla. He eventually abandoned his ship, which was loaded with black pearls, because there was no escape route. He walked to the nearest Spanish settlement, and the treasure-laden vessel was never seen again. The ruins of Dunksy Castle, on the windswept coast of Scotland, where sheer cliffs meet the cold waves of the Irish Sea, once stood a towering fortress gazing out toward the horizon. Dunksy Castle. For 3 centuries, the Adair family called this place home. They lived amid the salty air, endless winds, and sweeping views where the sea and sky merged. But those days of glory are long gone. Today, Dunksy is nothing but a silent ruin, a relic defeated by time and nature. Perched precariously on a rocky promontory near Port Patrick, it seems to hang at the edge of the world, caught between life and oblivion. When it stood, Dunksy was a formidable fortress. Thick stone walls enclosed tall watchtowers, guarding the coastline and footpaths along the shore. Yet even a fortress built to withstand enemies could not escape war. In 1489, under the sword and fire of Sir Alexander MacCulloch, the castle was mercilessly destroyed. Still, the Adairs did not give up. They rebuilt it from the ashes in 1510. Fate, however, seemed carved into its stones. The very location that once gave it strategic advantage became its downfall. No enemies or sieges were needed. Nature quietly finished the job. Sea winds blew day and night, relentless rain pounded the rocks, and even the largest stones cracked and fell into silence. By 1684, records show Dunksy had become a ruin. But Dunksy is more than rubble. It carries whispers from the past. One ancient legend tells of a nursemaid who accidentally dropped the child in her care from a high window into the sea below. Ever since, her ghost, tormented and cursed, wanders the castle's decaying halls, never finding forgiveness. Another story speaks of a piper who, one night, discovered a secret passage leading into the caves beneath the castle. He ventured into the darkness and never returned. Yet on still nights, when the sea winds fall silent and the waters lie calm as glass, those with keen ears can hear the faint sound of pipes rising from the depths, a haunting melody of a past that refuses to be forgotten. The Great Damazetti Bell. In the 15th century, Myanmar was a land far different from what we know today. A former Buddhist monk turned king, Damazetti, ruled from 1471 to 1492. Under his reign, the Southeast Asian kingdom entered a golden age, achieving remarkable advancements and prosperity. One of the greatest relics of this era was the massive Damazetti bell. According to legend, this was the largest bell ever cast. It stood about 6 meters high, over 4 meters wide, and was forged from 294 tons of metal, including silver and gold. Its surface was inscribed with a mysterious language. The bell was delivered to the Shwedagon Pagoda, a stupa that still stands today and is considered one of the oldest in the world. While the pagoda remains, the great bell has long vanished. It was stolen. In the 16th century, Myanmar's Buddhist kingdom fell into crisis, as Europeans first arrived as settlers, and later as invaders. Portuguese warlord Felipe de Brito and Ikote wrought havoc in the 1590s. By 1599, he had declared himself governor of Lower Myanmar. In 1608, he is believed to have stolen the Damazetti bell. It was so heavy that it had to be rolled downhill and dragged by elephants, but the journey proved more challenging than expected. While transporting it along the river, the ropes snapped, and the bell plunged into the water, disappearing without a trace. Felipe de Brito was executed in 1613, but the great bell was never seen again. That doesn't mean people stopped searching. In recent years, diver James Blunt made over 100 dives in the riverbed, but found only shipwrecks, not the bell. Experts believe its enormous weight may have buried it under 8 meters of silt. The volcano village on the edge of doom. Hidden within the caldera of a volcano in Japan lies a village that seems unafraid of death even as it lives on the edge of hell. Visiting this place is an experience unlike any other. You may never want to return. Ogashima is the very definition of in the middle of nowhere. It lies 357 kilometers south of Tokyo, Perched on the rim of the Philippine Sea, among the Izu Islands, Aogashima is the most isolated still inhabited. Only 170 residents call it home, and all could be wiped out at any moment. Living on a volcanic island is not unusual. Hawaii proves that. But what makes Aogashima unique is that its people live inside the crater of an active volcano. Japan's meteorological agency classifies Aogashima as an active Class C volcano. Its last eruption was in the 1780s, over 2 centuries ago. Legends say half the population was burned alive, while the other half fled to higher ground. When the ash settled, the survivors returned and rebuilt their village inside the crater. People are believed to have lived on Aogashima for over a millennium. Tokugawa-era records show Edo period residents, but nobody knows who first set foot on the island or when. It could have been prehistoric, or perhaps during the Middle Ages. The Haunted Hotel in Australia. Few people know that one of Australia's historic hotels is haunted by an unusual ghost, the spirit of a former prime minister. The Kurrajong Hotel was built in 1925-inch Canberra by architect John Murdoch, who also designed Australia's nearby Parliament House. It was originally intended solely as lodging for politicians traveling from Melbourne to the new capital, a quiet retreat for the nation's power brokers. The Great Depression forced the hotel to open to the public. Yet many politicians continued to make it their home away from home. During the dark days of World War II, Prime Minister John Curtin stayed here, leaving the walls of Kurrajong steeped in the breath of history and monumental decisions. But among all the distinguished guests who walked its tiled halls and worn stone steps, one man never seemed to leave. Former Prime Minister Ben Chifley, who led Australia after the war, died in the Kurrajong Hotel in 1951. Although entitled to move into the grand prime ministerial residence, he chose instead to live simply here as an ordinary man. Even after leaving office, he stayed. And in the very room he loved, his heart stopped beating. Ever since, the hotel has reported strange phenomena. Some have seen a figure in a gray suit silently standing on the balcony, gazing into the courtyard at night. Others speak of a lone silhouette at the window, deep in thought. No one says it aloud, but many believe Ben Chifley's spirit still lingers where he once called home. Perhaps it is his deep attachment, his monumental memories, or simply his humble habits that keep him there. In the heart of Canberra, the Kurrajong is more than just a historic hotel. It is a silent fragment of history, where a prime minister once lived, dreamed, and perhaps still quietly walks the empty halls at night. Choqquequirao, Peru, the lonely Machu Picchu. Deep in the majestic Andes, Choqquequirao is one of Peru's most remote Inca ruins. Though not as famous as Machu Picchu, it is no less breathtaking and has earned the nickname the Lonely Machu Picchu. Carved into tropical mountain slopes, its intricate stone terraces and stairways rise high above the Apurimac River, 160 kilometers west of Cuzco. Believed to have been a royal estate, it was built generations before the Spanish arrived. With plazas, ceremonial temples, great halls, and sophisticated waterworks, Choqquequirao lies hidden amid wild mountains. Over the past 20 years, many of its structures have been excavated. Its name means Cradle of Gold. Nestled beneath the Salcantay mountain, it takes 2 days by mule to reach. Called Machu Picchu's sacred sister, it is now being developed by Peru as an alternative tourist destination. Many believe Choqquequirao was once a cultural and religious hub for the Inca Empire, or a control point connecting sacred temple complexes. Its ecosystem teems with Andean deer, guinea pigs, hummingbirds, and spectacled bears. With giant ferns and countless orchids, the site exudes a mystical beauty. At an altitude of 3,000 meters, 1,500 meters above the river, and surrounded by snow-capped peaks, it is easy to see why the Inca chose this place to honor mountain gods, river spirits, and the forces of nature. For centuries, Choqquequirao remained shrouded in mystery, with its complex terraced fields, ceremonial sites devoted to the sun, ancestors, earth, water, and unseen powers. This site deserves as much reverence as Machu Picchu, the pyramid before the Great Flood. Amid the sun-scorched sands of Saqqara, Egypt's oldest royal necropolis, archaeologists uncovered an unusual pyramid, one unlike any other. Buried 7 meters beneath layers of desert, its ruins reveal a secret that may change how we view prehistoric history and the legend of the Great Flood. The pyramid is believed to be the resting place of a little-known queen in Egypt's complex dynastic history, Queen Sesheshet. She was not as famous as Cleopatra or Nefertiti, but her role was critical. About 4,300 years ago, she helped secure her son Pharaoh Teti's rise to power, launching the 6th dynasty. In her time, power was wielded not only through the throne, but through subtle influence in the harem and political courts. After measuring its base and surviving angles, archaeologists estimate the pyramid originally stood 14 meters tall. Though modest compared to the grand monuments of Giza, its discovery carries special historical weight. In 2008, famed Egyptologist Zahi Hawass announced this as Egypt's 118th recorded pyramid, an impressive number for such an ancient civilization. Unfortunately, Sesheshet's pyramid is no longer intact. It was plundered in antiquity, with treasure hunters desecrating even the most sacred. When Hawass's team rediscovered it, all burial goods were gone, leaving only the queen's remains among the collapsed stones. What makes this pyramid extraordinary is not just its architecture or its queen, but its timeline. The Bible places the Great Flood around 2250 BCE, eerily close to the pyramid's construction date, estimated only 50 years later. While far from certain, this raises the theory that the pyramid may have been built during or just after the deluge. This leads to a bigger question. If the Great Flood truly happened, did it impact the Egyptians' ability to build their monumental works? The colossal pyramids of Giza, built roughly 200 years before Sesheshet's, showcase unmatched engineering. But after the supposed flood, no structure ever reached such scale again. Could an earlier, lost civilization, one with extraordinary building knowledge, have been wiped out by the waters? If so, from 2250 BCE onward, the Egyptians may have been mere heirs to a memory bereft of the tools or wisdom to recreate wonders like the Great Pyramid. Without that technology, the Great Pyramid held its record as the tallest structure on Earth for millennia, and Queen Sesheshet's small yet telling pyramid may stand as the final witness to a chapter of history long buried by the sands of time. The Manora of the Temple. In the Hebrew Bible, one sacred object is mentioned above all others, the Manora of the Temple, a 7-branched lampstand. Used in the tabernacle and later in the Temple of Jerusalem around the 10th century BCE, it became a central symbol of Jewish faith. It was crafted from pure gold, with its lamps fueled only by pure olive oil. Then disaster struck. Solomon's temple was plundered by the Babylonians in the 6th century BCE. When the Jews rebuilt the Second Temple, it too was destroyed by the Romans in 70 CE. The Roman conquerors looted the final menorah and carried it to Rome. To this day, the Arch of Titus in Rome depicts the Romans seizing the menorah, a testament to their victory. What happened to the menorah afterward remains one of history's great mysteries. Some sources claim it was moved from Rome to Carthage when the city fell to the Vandals in 455. The Byzantine historian Procopius wrote that the Byzantines later recovered it a century later and took it to Constantinople, eventually returning it to Jerusalem. But after that, it vanished. From the 6th century onward, records grow murky. There is no evidence of pilgrims visiting Jerusalem to see the menorah. Some believe the Persians captured it in 614 and melted it down for jewelry. Others suggest it was lost in a shipwreck. A persistent rumor claims the Vatican still hides it beneath the Basilica of St. John Lateran. One thing is certain, the menorah was real. Ancient texts and carvings confirm its existence, yet the artifact itself is gone. Do you believe the Vatican keeps it hidden, or has it been lost forever? The Amber Room. In 2021, researchers uncovered a hidden network of tunnels beneath the former Nazi headquarters in Poland. This underground labyrinth, previously unknown, has been described as the most significant discovery ever made at the site. It was once Hitler's main base in Eastern Europe, an ideal place to hide the missing Amber Room. A curator at the local museum noted that many of the tunnels appeared to have been deliberately filled in, as if to conceal something. Experts are now carefully clearing debris to ensure safety before exploring the entire network. The Amber Room was one of Russia's most treasured masterpieces before World War II. Created in 1701 by German craftsman Andreas Schluter, it was originally intended to adorn the walls of Charlottenburg Palace in Berlin, the residence of King Frederick I of Prussia. Installed in 1716, it was later gifted to Tsar Peter the Great and moved to St. Petersburg, where it was fitted into Catherine Palace. During World War II, the Nazis looted the Amber Room, over 6 tons of amber, worth an estimated $500 million today, though its historical value is beyond measure. A wealthy collector could spend the fortune of a small nation to own it if it ever surfaced on the black market. To this day, the Amber Room has not been found in the secret tunnels, but it may lie hidden under rubble, sealed away in ancient wooden crates. Around the same time, another research group discovered a shipwreck in the Baltic Sea, suggesting it may have carried fragments of the room. Almost every time something mysterious related to World War II is unearthed, hopes rise that the Amber Room will finally reappear. What the Nazis ultimately did with the treasure remains an enigma, and since 1945, the search has never ceased. Most believe it lies somewhere in Poland, but its exact location is unknown. For now, the Russians have built a replica in Catherine Palace to replace what was lost. The treasure of the temple. The Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered in 1947 by two Bedouin shepherds. Hidden in clay jars within caves above the Dead Sea, they revealed over 800 manuscripts dating back 2,000 years. Among them, one scroll stands apart, the third quarter of 15. Unlike most scrolls, which were written on parchment or papyrus, this one was engraved on copper, a unique artifact found deep in a dark cave. Known as the Copper Scroll, it contains a detailed map to ancient treasure, listing 64 locations where immense riches were supposedly buried. Professor Richard Freund calls the third quarter of 15 the most important of all the Dead Sea Scrolls. Discovered in 1952, it has fueled endless debate. Some scholars dismiss it as a Jewish legend, misinterpreted as fact. Others believe it holds directions to the legendary treasures of the First Temple items, such as the Ark of the Covenant, the Manora, and other sacred relics, along with 174 tons of gold and silver. The problem lies in the references to landmarks that vanished over 2,000 years ago. Despite decades of research, not a single treasure described in the 64 entries has ever been found. The tombs of the nobles, Egypt. The Valley of the Kings in Egypt is world famous as the resting place of pharaohs like Tutankhamun. But have you ever heard of the tombs of the nobles? Much like other ancient burial grounds, this site holds hundreds of rock-cut tombs reserved for Egypt's elite officials. Many date back 3,800 years, adorned with intricate carvings, vibrant wall paintings, and beautiful hieroglyphs. While most visitors flock to the grand tombs of the kings, exploring these lesser-known tombs offers a unique glimpse into the lives of those who ran ancient Egypt's vast machinery. Here lie governors, scribes, and courtiers, figures less celebrated than Akhenaten, Nefertiti, or Tutankhamun, yet essential to the civilization's success. Discovered in 1885 by British archaeologist Lord Grenfell, the necropolis preserves the names of high-ranking individuals from the Old and Middle Kingdoms. They may not be household names, but the mayor of Thebes, secretaries under Hatshepsut and Thutmose III, stewards, and other officials all reflect the wealth and critical role of those who stood closest to the pharaohs. Bagan, Myanmar. From the 9th to the 13th centuries, the ancient city of Bagan was the political, economic, and cultural heart of the pagan empire. Between the 11th and 13th centuries, its powerful kings commissioned the construction of thousands of temples at its height. More than 1,000,000 Buddhist temples, pagodas, and monasteries stretched across 100 square kilometers in central Myanmar. Today, over 2,200 structures remain. For 250 years, Bagan thrived, attracting scholars and monks from as far as India. But the Mongol invasions brought ruin, and the kingdom fell into decline. Despite the devastation, temple construction continued until the 15th century. Pilgrims still visit today, though most focus only on the more famous monuments. Many smaller temples, hidden deep in the forest or difficult to reach, have fallen into severe disrepair. Others were damaged by earthquakes. Only a few dozen remain in good condition. During the 1990s, the government began restoring some ruined temples, but modern materials and techniques compromised their authenticity. Because of these restoration mistakes, UNESCO initially refused to list Bagan as a World Heritage Site. Nevertheless, the city continues to captivate visitors with its ancient ruins, carrying the golden memories of a once brilliant civilization. If you found these mysterious stories intriguing, leave your thoughts below and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next exploration with us. See you in the next video.